Yeah, so the purpose of today is actually not to examine you, so you don't have to be nervous at all. It's us that should be nervous because it's really for you to decide and help you make up your mind about what you want to do with your offers. Um, it's the format of today is so we're going to give you a bit of a talk, explain to you a bit about the kind of degree and the careers options and what people go on to do with the degree because it's not always obvious what a biochemical engineer actually does when they leave. And then we're going to have, as I say, a little bit of an exercise on vaccine production to give you a flavour of some of the things that we're thinking about. We're going to take you on a tour around so you can see some of our facilities, you can get a feel for some of the activities that we're doing. And then we're going to have a cup of tea and some cake, and some of the undergraduates are going to come and meet you. So you can ask them all the things that you don't want to ask me, which are usually how many hours a week do I have to work and is it really hard? Those are the two things that people say. But it's, you know, it's an engineering degree, it's full on. You wouldn't be here if you didn't know what it entailed. So it's, you know, you're obviously pretty motivated and you've all got the right A levels, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting in this room with an offer from UCL. So you've done really well so far. Okay, shall I get started on the talk? Shall I? Okay, that's a bit better. Right, so I'll start this off by asking you a question. So what do you think is biochemical engineering? So what made you apply? What do you think you're going to do here? Any ideas? So just before we start, who has applied for the BEng or MEng and who has applied for the BSc program? The MEng? The MEng? MEng. Okay, that's good. Right, so you're all MEng. So because we have 3 degree programs that we offer, so it's good to know which one that you're on. So yeah, so I mean you can kind of imagine what a chemical engineer does, right? Probably have applied for other chemical engineering degree courses, maybe yourselves. So, what is biochemical engineering? Well, I think the way I like to explain it is that it is an interdisciplinary subject. So, we take a lot of the fundamentals that you might learn in chemical engineering. So, this might be things like mass transfer, fluid flow, thermodynamics. But what we do is we apply it to biological systems. So, you know, whereas in chemical engineering, you might be dealing with very high temperatures and pressures. You might be thinking about, you know, distillation of petroleum. Here, what we might be thinking about is how do we control a reactor with the temperature so precisely that our cells are kept in the correct environment? So we're really thinking about how all of these engineering fundamentals relate to biological processes. And we're doing it in a really applied way. So we sit really at the interface between biotechnology and chemical engineering. So for example, maybe we're looking at manufacturing stem cells, we're doing some regenerative medicine. So we might be studying how fluid flows because we're culturing tissues and we want the cells to grow evenly. Perhaps we're making bioethanol and we need to think about how to separate the ethanol from the fermentation broth. That would be the kind of thing that we would get involved in. So it requires you to learn both the fundamentals of molecular biology, but it also requires you to learn the maths and engineering as well. So it's what makes the degree challenging because you have to really become expert at 2 quite different things, but also what makes you unique because you really have a deep understanding of both aspects. So I'm just going to show you the next slide because I was reading about this morning. So our department's about to celebrate 20 years of teaching undergraduates. As I say, I'm one of the older generation when it just first started teaching at undergraduate level. But how did this discipline form? So it really actually was born here to some extent at UCL. And back in the 1950s, there's some people called Malcolm Lilly, Peter Dunnell, who really sort of began to look at how some of the aspects of molecular biology or biochemistry might be applied to make products or processes. So I find this really funny quote in a piece that Patricia Clark, who was one of the former professors here, had written, where they had no large fermenters. So you're going to see, actually, we have a whole suite of fermenters. We have a really fantastic facility, £35 million worth of equipment. But at that time, they had to do their fermentations in solvent cans, and they had to do the purification in a dustbin. So we've come a long way since those days. But really, at that time, it was so exciting because chemical engineers were not working with biology at all. They didn't understand how to grow microorganisms. They didn't understand how to work with enzymes. And the biochemists were scared of making things at scale. So really what the biochemical engineers, these first group of people really did was they had a strong belief that biotechnology could contribute to making useful products or processes for the world. So these are people that are kind of like still very much have left a really strong legacy in the department in terms of their kind of spirit of teamwork, but also innovation as well. So back in 1966, apparently the University of London very reluctantly approved an MSc degree. They didn't really think that biotechnology would take off. They were wrong, so thank goodness. And in 1993, the provost of UCL invested in this part of the building that you're sitting in now. So this is the Advanced Centre for Biochemical Engineering. This is our pilot plant. And then about 4 years ago, we all moved into the top part of this building. So previously we had the pilot plant, but we were scattered around campus. Now we occupy the whole entire Bernard Katz building. So down here you have fermentation and the large scale process engineering. Then on the kind of 5th floor you have the regenerative medicine and stem cell work, and on the 6th floor is all of our synthetic biology. So it really reflects like how we've moved, how this field has developed and grown. It's so exciting. So yeah, we are still quite a small department in terms of UCL. So in total we have 174 undergraduates. So that's across all 4 years and all programs. I don't know how many people are in your year at school, but it's a really family kind of feel. So we have about 20 full-time members of academic staff. We have some more teaching fellows. And then we have a huge body of PhD students, a number of which I can't remember. But you soon get to know everybody within the department, and there's a lot of kind of, cohesion and friendliness and mentoring between year groups. So within 1 year of intake, I think this year the target intake is 56 students. So that's how many people will be on the degree program. So it's something to bear in mind when you're looking at degrees and you're going to other universities is how big is the class going to be that you're sitting in, because it's very, well, speaking as a lecturer, it's very different talking to 400 students than it is to a class of maybe 30 or 40. So on the MEng, so we're 56 split between BSc and MEng, so typically we have about 40 students on the MEng BEng route. So just to give you an idea of how we teach, it's very much sort of small group learning. Okay, so what was in this longer article, they describe a very promising MSc student whose name was Mike Hoare, and he became our first head of department 20 years ago. So it's a lovely story. So as I say, we offer a number of degree routes. You're all on the MEng route, so we'll really focus and talk a little bit more about that today, given that you're all in the same programme. So what kind of things do we make? Really what we teach you are the fundamentals so that you can apply them to a number of different fields. But these are just some of the things that we study and we get involved in. So it may well be something like biopharmaceuticals. So you probably have heard of drugs like Herceptin, sort of monoclonal antibody drugs. You may have studied that at school. So things like vaccines, antibiotics, immunotherapies, anything that has to be made that's a biological molecule that might have to be injected into the body. Is very, very much a strong concern of our degree. And your field is regenerative medicines and stem cell therapies, where we're looking perhaps at tissue culture or cell and gene therapy. One area that I suppose is much more related to what I do is the kind of aspect of sustainability and making biofuels, bioplastics, and sustainable chemicals using biology. And then we have kind of the future. You know, you've heard of CRISPR, and I'm sure you've heard of synthetic biology. You might be involved in an iGEM team. So this is really going forward where the possibilities are sort of endless now in terms of the tools that we have to manipulate and engineer biological systems. So what we do is we really work at the translational end. So if you imagine, well, I'm going to talk about in a second about drug discovery, we come in after perhaps a molecule or something has been discovered, and someone needs to work out how are we going to manufacture this, and what's it going to look like, and how much is it going to cost. So if you imagine a drug discovery process where perhaps here you have maybe a promising candidate molecule, maybe this is an antibody, for example. So it's usually around this point, you might hear something on the news. Oh, scientists have discovered XYZ biological, which may help against, you know, certain types of cancer. Between that news story and that being available to patients, it's a very long journey. It's a very risk-laden journey, but it's also really where biochemical engineering comes into play. So we answer, or we help to answer, some of the questions of how will I make it, how will I manufacture this compound, how much can we make. Some things are made in very small quantities, so obviously the price will be very expensive, but it won't be something that's for wider deployment, unlike vaccines where we're really looking at making huge quantities for much lower cost. A really important one is how do we make quality assurance? So how do we produce the same thing every time within acceptable limits? And if it's going to patients, it has to meet regulatory requirements of safety. We have to ensure there's no contamination, and we have to ensure that every batch is identical. And really importantly, how much will it cost? So whether we're working on a biofuel, whether we're working on a biopharmaceutical, this question never goes away, but we are the ones who calculate this because we know how it's manufactured and we're able to work out all of the cost components of it. So we always say we need nerves of steel and cool heads. We also have a really good time here. We have a lot of fun, but we are responsible for dealing with a huge amount of risk and making some key decisions in this process. So as things move through clinical trials, we have to be able to produce sufficient material for that drug to be tested. So what does this kind of look like then? So when we have a lot of language that's very specific to our discipline, and the world has no clue what we're talking about. So I'll just let you into some of the terminology now. So we typically talk about things being upstream or downstream. So upstream is when we're talking about cell culture, anything to do with maybe molecular biology or manipulation of the cells. So upstream also covers the cultivation. So say, for example, we are making a vaccine. We've engineered yeast and we're producing a vaccine. We'll be looking at how we can scale up production. So typically in the lab, we'll be working at milliliter scale. However, when we go to manufacture, we're going to have to go up to perhaps thousands of liters. For that, we're going to have to understand how heat is transferred. We're going to have to understand how the biology responds to changes in its environment. So quite often when you increase the density of cell culture, cells begin to do very strange things, and we have to be able to understand both the physiological responses, but also the engineering solutions to that. Then we have downstream, and this is really where we begin to look at how do we extract our product, how do we purify it, and how do we make it safe. So if our vaccine is perhaps accumulated inside the cell, our protein is made inside the cell, we're going to have to break the cell open. So we're going to have to use perhaps cell lysis. So first of all, we're going to have to harvest the cells. We need to separate it out from all of the growth media that it's in. We're going to have to break them open. We're going to have to then really use our knowledge to selectively separate out our protein of interest from all of the other proteins in the cell, the DNA, the RNA, all the other contaminants. So we're going to have to choose a selection of unit operations to be able to do that. And then finally, we're going to have to look at how do we pack and store and make sure that the product is stable. So in the case of vaccines, this is really crucial because that's how it's transported. Do you need a cold chain, or can you do without that? So this really determines, you know, the reach of drugs into the wider world. So as I say, it's very interdisciplinary. We're asking you to apply biology, chemistry, engineering, mathematics, to this whole entire process. So it's very, very much on the translational side. So you're going to learn about all of these things if you come here. And it's going to be really enjoyable because what we're asking you to do is not just learn about subjects in very discrete, kind of siloed ways, but to try and put things together as much as possible and combine your knowledge. So we have 3 degree programs, as I mentioned. So if we look at the BEng MEng route, so this is accredited by the Institute of Chemical Engineers, so we fall under that umbrella. But that means that you're the first step towards professional chartership, so accredited, so chartership status, which is very important if you want to be a practicing engineer. In this degree, what you will do in the first year is really a year about getting everyone up to the same level. So some people come in with biology, some people come in with a lot of maths. And the first year kind of brings everyone up to the same level and introduces you to a lot of the fundamentals. So you'll be doing maths, you'll be doing thermodynamics, but you'll also be doing molecular biology practicals. And then we have a course that introduces you to biochemical engineering and shows you what on earth you're learning all of this for. So the first year is very tough because it's the one where you probably are going to have to stretch a lot. You know, if you haven't done physics, you know, thermal will be your challenge. If you haven't done biology, molecular biology will be the one that you have to work on. So but it's a great year because it introduces you to everything that you need to know. And then after that, you can begin to kind of specialize a little bit more. In the second year, you get to choose something called a minor. So UCL has a very unique way of teaching engineering, and we call it the Integrated Engineering Program. It's pretty revolutionary. We just won an award for higher education teaching, and it really is about building flexibility into the degree, but also learning through research and doing rather than through lectures. There's so much material on the internet now. If you just want to learn like maths, you can just go on Khan Academy. You don't have to pay a lot of money to come to university. What you come here for is the experience, and you come here to get practicals, and you come here to get all of the kind of tacit knowledge and that you don't get through just following, you know, instructions. So the engineering minor is a chance to diversify a little bit. So you have a choice between a whole range of topics that you can choose. You take 3 modules in this topic. It could be programming, it could be regenerative medicine, it could be mathematics for finance, it could be a language, it could be environmental engineering. I think it's about 12 choices. So, and you get to pick after the end of the first year, so you don't have to decide right away. In the third year of the MEng route, this is where everything begins to come together. So you'll do what's called a design project. And a design project is a kind of a case study that lasts the whole entire year, where you will be given a drug that you have to manufacture, and you will have to work out how to make it. You'll have to design the plant, and you'll have to evaluate the business case. It sounds really daunting, but by that point, you will actually be able to do all of those things. And what's lovely is that we have lots and lots of industry interaction. So with every sort of step in the design project, we get industry in to kind of give feedback, to give real life perspective, to sort of say, actually, no, we would never do it like that, or that's very interesting. So it's a very, it's an iterative process. Don't worry, you won't be thrown in completely at the deep end, but it is the kind of pinnacle, and that's kind of what makes our degree accredited, because we have this engineering case study that you're able to do all of the process engineering aspects as well. So since you've all applied for the MEng, what's really nice is that you have a lot of options then. So as the degree progresses, you get to decide what do you find really interesting, and how you would like to kind of tailor it to suit what you want to do. All of these options are open to all of you. You only have to decide in your third year what you want to do. So you could either choose to do your final year in biochemical engineering, in which case you'll do a long research project within one of the groups here. So you'll work in the lab. You could choose to do it with chemical engineering. So if you're kind of on the fence and you're interested in both, that gives you an opportunity to explore some of the topics that are covered in chemical engineering. You can do your final year with business and management. So you'll take a lot more modules in sort of finance and project management and business planning. You can choose to go abroad, like Shalim and I have done. UCL have a huge number of partnerships all over the world. So we have students in Canada, in Australia at the minute. I think, yeah, 2 in Canada and 1 in Australia at the minute. I'm on their study abroad year. And this is actually brand new. So this is just launched this last year, where students get to spend their final year in industry. Now, a lot of degree programs that you will see will do a sandwich year in industry, or it'll be the 3rd year of the degree. The feedback from the companies that we work with said, actually, students are much more able to do more advanced projects if they come in their final year, but also they're much more confident and equipped to do some more sophisticated work. But also it doesn't interrupt the flow of the degree that sometimes a sandwich year can do. You know, you've built a rapport with your kind of cohort, and then all of a sudden you're pulled out and you're a year below. So this means that you sort of follow on in the same year group the whole entire time. It's really nice because students are paid a stipend to go and work at the company. So Amandeep is at Eli Lilly in Ireland, Hamza's at GSK in Stevenage, and Sam is working at UCB in Slough. They're all doing really different things: fermentation, cell and gene therapy, big pharma. It's quite exciting. So the partnerships are growing, and it's very competitive. So the companies are actually, they really want the students to come because it gives them a chance to sort of see how you work. And a lot of people, you know, the idea is that you probably will, you know, maybe go on and work for the company afterwards. So you build a relationship with them. So those are all of the kind of options that you have if you stay for 4 years. So as I mentioned, UCL has this kind of system that they use for teaching engineering called the IUP. This diagram will mean absolutely nothing to you. It took me, I think, about 3 months to understand how this all fits together. But really at the core of it, you will do some activities. So some are called challenges, which means that you will work with engineers across the faculty. So you'll work with electrical engineers, chemical engineers, mechanical engineers on a challenge. And you'll all have to bring something from your discipline to solve the problem. Or you'll do a lot of what we call scenarios. So these are 1 week long activities. They're sort of problem based. So we'll give you a real life challenge and then we'll ask you to work in teams using all of the concepts that you've maybe just been studying and applying those to that problem. So we have 6 of those. So if you imagine we teach for 4 weeks, then you do 1 week of scenario-based learning. So it's very much an interruption to this whole kind of just lecture. It's much more active and engages everyone's brain. The feedback that we get is amazing. Students love it. It's incredibly intense, but it's fantastic. So I run one on bioethanol manufacture. So before Christmas, we do a simulation to choose the conditions to run a fermentation. The students run the fermentation, get the data. Then after Christmas, we do a second week where we look at different feedstocks. So we look at seaweed, we look at miscanthus, we look at food waste, and could we make biofuel from those? And then we do a sustainability evaluation. So we look at carbon footprinting and also the economics. And it's really fun because we get to present to industry at the end. And it's, yeah, so it's very, very much trying to look at what's current as well and respond to that. So as I mentioned, you get to choose a minor subject as well. So you will follow that in your 2nd and 3rd year. So as I say, a lot of what we do is group work based. It's in the pilot plant or in the labs, or it's doing teamwork. It's a much more active way of learning, but it's also much more interesting. And it's really about getting value from your degree as well, so that you're getting exposed as well to some of the tools, the equipment, the processes that are used in industry as well. So other things our students get involved in. So this is the International Genetically Engineered Machines competition. It's run from our department every year. Every year we field a team. Every year we do really well. So we aim for at least a gold medal in this competition. And this particular group, I think we're looking at plastic waste in the ocean. And so this is a team of undergraduates. and they were looking at engineering E. coli to produce enzymes to break down microplastic waste in the ocean. What's really interesting is that Bethan, during the course of this project, they were looking at could they build small-scale tools for synthetic biology that could be used worldwide. And so she's gone on to found a company called Bento Bioworks, and they make a kind of lab in a box kit. So they've just had an amazing Kickstarter campaign, and they've launched the first prototypes of their lab kit. So I think yeah. So this chap now works with her. I think she works for Deloitte. Yeah. So everyone's gone on to kind of great and interesting things. But it's a fantastic chance to spend a summer in the lab working, and then everyone gets to go to Boston for the Jamboree. Another thing that our students really, and because it's a small department, we actively encourage it, is really to get involved in research from a very early stage. So this is a group of, well, they're now third year, but at the time second year undergraduates. They did the scenario week on bioethanol production from sugar beet pulp. So sugar in the UK is made from sugar beet. They extract the inside and make table sugar from it. The rest of it is actually a waste product. So we were looking at, could we ferment this and produce biofuel? They had done an economic and sustainability analysis, and they presented this at the British Conference for Undergraduate Research. So this is them taking their poster to the beach in Bournemouth. And after that, Mathilde applied for a summer internship. So she spent 8 weeks actually doing some of the experiments that they had been modelling in their study. And Haneen spent 3 weeks working on the carbon footprinting here in the department. So it's a really nice chance to use some of the things that you're learning and then take it on and be able to get kind of lab experience and work, you know, actually with some of our researchers here. So it's a nice chance to use the topics you do as a springboard for future learning. And it's something that UCL is really encouraging. So you can read about something called the connected curriculum. And it's how we're changing, again, our teaching practice to really look at how to get undergraduates more involved with research. So as we kind of refresh and update courses, it's really something in the forefront of our minds that things should be open-ended, not recipes, and that you should be contributing to knowledge as well as undergraduates. So what can you do with this degree? So there is a really wide range of sectors that people go into. Many people go into the biotech sector and the pharmaceutical industry, but we do have people who go on to graduate programs, perhaps in large sort of petrochemical companies, industrial biotech, consultancy. Because we have really specialist knowledge, it's actually something that's in demand from companies like McKinsey. We just had someone who was an alumni who got a job at McKinsey, her large kind of consultancy firm, and he's working on how to do supply chains for antiretroviral drugs for South America, because he understands how the drugs are made, he understands the conditions and the manufacturing process, but also the cold chain and how they should be delivered. His company really value his expertise, and he's using and applying that. So it's something that he directly learned on the degree program. So don't forget, I mean, the pharmaceutical industry is a massive industry. So if you're interested in finance and kind of consultancy, having that background, engineers are always in demand because they're problem solvers. People in the city like that. People have gone on to patent law, and also many of our students go on to further study. Now, it's not because we attract just those kind of people. It's because it's a young field, it's emerging, and there's so much still to know and understand that really many people then go on to kind of do PhDs or engineering doctorates because, they get captivated by a topic and they want to just research more. But also, it's having a doctoral training is also a kind of way to progress perhaps further in industry as well. So as I say, into a really diverse set of sectors. What's the average starting salary? I mean, obviously the average starting salary is determined by what you end up doing and how hard you work and what opportunities you decide to take. But what I would say is that there is a skills gap in our sector. So it's really frustrating as admissions tutor because I could have twice as many of you and industry still wouldn't have enough people. Our graduates are really sought after. because they have such specialist knowledge, and industry just can't get enough of our people. So the prospects for employment are really bright, but it's also a global industry, so it offers you a lot of mobility. If you want to go and work in Singapore, if you want to go and work in the US, there's plenty of opportunities. So an engineering degree, and I don't need to tell you this, but it also teaches you a lot of soft skills. So things like leadership, being able to present to an audience, being able to think on your feet, and just solve problems. And that's, you know, something that's in demand in many sectors. So in terms of kind of some of our recent graduates, where have they gone from the BEng? So yeah, we've gone into people have gone into management consultancy. Again, a lot of people have gone on to work in maybe large pharmaceutical companies, often through connections they've made in the department. So through sort of industry visits, they've made contacts and they've used that to be able to secure employment later on. Gone on to further study law, or else sort of then maybe doctoral programs. But yeah, what I wanted to maybe just show you is a few case studies. I'll talk about Tom. So Tom teaches for safety lecture for me now, actually, and he graduated in 2005. And he got a graduate position at Jacobs, so it was on one of the engineering graduate schemes. He was hired. He actually, he didn't really enjoy the kind of exams and academic side, but what he loved was the process design. So when he got to do the long project work, he just sort of flourished, and he really found what he really was motivated by. So when he got to the design project, he really enjoyed it, and he actually won Best Design Project of the Year. And this sort of led him down this path of kind of going to work for more sort of engineering firms. So he went to work for Jacobs. He's then gone to work for another sort of specialized company called Exmoor Pharma, who design pharmaceutical facilities. And he used his expertise. He went to Australia for a bit. He was designing some manufacturing facilities there. He's worked in Iceland, San Diego. So he's really, his big thing is he just loves to travel. So he's used his job to kind of explore the world, if you like, but also to kind of give back too. So he's joined another company called Finesse. They're kind of a technology supplier company for bioreactors. But yeah, he comes back to the department and teaches for us, but he also is able to share then his experience. He knows what it's like to sit in the room and hear these things. And what we try and do, topics like safety, often when they're taught in engineering, they're very generic. And because what we do is quite specialised, it's more interesting to get practitioners in the field to come back and lecture, because they're able to give you insights that you just won't find in a general textbook. It's much more vivid. And when he's talking about being on site and seeing some of these safety issues, for example. Maria is now back doing a PhD with us, but she had left the degree and she had done a year in industry. She'd gone into industry and worked for a little while, but then actually what she decided, the topic that she was really motivated by, she decided to come back and study a PhD here. So she has gone kind of full circle as well. But what she had found is actually it was quite easy to find a job when she left. She didn't particularly struggle, and she was able to use the contacts she had made in the department to secure her first position. Steffi is based over in Belgium. She's working for UCB Pharma. So she had done, well, you can see her A levels there, maybe similar to some of you sitting here. She had worked during her degree for UCB, but she had built a relationship with them. And while she was working there as part of her degree, she managed to secure extra secondments, and now she's working for them full time. And she's managing quite a number of projects. So you can kind of see what she's up to. She's working in the lab, but she's also then taking on quite a lot more managerial stuff. She's relatively young. It's quite exciting. We had a careers Skype with her that we recorded. You're very welcome to watch after this, where she talks about the kind of level of responsibility that she was given quite quickly. And again, it's because she's going straight in, having had that experience in her undergraduate. So it's great. So we did have an alumni event a couple of years ago. These are just some of the companies that were represented at this event. So it's sort of large industry as well as kind of biotech startups. So two of the people who were there, one of them is Barry Buckland. So Barry was sort of a very enthusiastic master's student at one point, and got a PhD from UCL in 1974. He then became vice president of Merck. He has been responsible for the development of many of their kind of big biopharmaceutical drugs, but he also guest lectures now for us. So he comes back and teaches on some of our design and final year courses as well. And he's an enormous sort of friend of the department and big supporter of us. So that's what happens if you go to large industry. But what if you are interested by biotech? What if the idea of working for a small company really appeals to you? So this is Ewan. Ewan did our undergraduate here, and then he also did a PhD in the department. And he was really interested in commercialization of new ideas. And in collaboration with Dan Bracewell, one of the lecturers here, they have come up with a new technology for purifying proteins. It's these nanofiber membranes. It started off as a very kind of small scale research project. The company then spun out of the department. So they all worked here for a while. We act as kind of like an incubator space. Now they employ, I think, about 20 people, and they have their own base in Stevenage, a kind of startup sort of incubator space there. They've recently been acquired by GE Healthcare, which is amazing. I mean, this is just fantastic, and the trajectory is fantastic. Is great, but it's an example of how we try to nurture entrepreneurial spirits. We've had quite a few companies spin out from the department. We have Synthase, a synthetic biology company, and Accitan, another company making vaccines in algae, that have spun out recently. So very much, if the idea of working in a small kind of biotech startup is appealing to you, then you'll also get the skills for that too. So those are my contact details, and I'm pretty easy to find. If you have any questions after today.
Okay, so I think Brenda's obviously told you everything about the course, what we look for in students that come in.
I haven't told them that.
You haven't told them that, okay. So I think in terms of, I tend to look at it as the students that come in, what happens to them and what goes out. So it's a little bit like a process of what we look for, what happens to the students, your experience while you're here, and then when you go on to after the degree program. So I think if I start from the beginning, we look for a range of skills. Obviously, you've got your A-level subjects that have to be aligned to what we're looking for. But we also look at the personal statements and we see what other things you're interested in. And are there skills that we can see in there that will make you a good biochemical engineer, biotechnologist as you go through the program? So, are there evidence of being involved in teams, teamwork, problem solving? These are the skills that we will develop as part of the degree program, and what will be really important for you as you go into your career. When you come in, you're assigned a personal tutor. So a lot of parents are kind of interested in what's going to happen to their son or daughter who perhaps has gone away from home for the first time in their lives. They want to know that they're sort of looked after and cared for. So when you come in, you're assigned a personal tutor, and you see your personal tutor. Certainly in the first year, there's a regular timetable slots where there's an hour every week where your personal tutor is available. So Shalim at the back there was one of my personal tutees a long time ago, before he graduated and came back to do his PhD, and now postdoc. And the role of the personal tutor is there to sort of look after sort of pastoral care. So it's making sure that you're keeping up with your studies, so we can seal your marks on the Moodle electronic system. But we want to know that you're engaging with other things. We can look at your marks, and then the obvious thing is if somebody's doing really well and the marks start to decline, it's a sure indication that something is going on. You're involved in too many pastimes, you're not concentrating on your studies, maybe they've got some health issues. And so it's the job of the personal tutor to identify those issues and kind of help you through the program. Because ultimately we are responsible for your academic performance. So that's the first year. We tend to look after you quite well, which I think parents are sort of interested in. We then keep regular contact with your personal tutor as you go through the programme. And we're looking to introduce a new scheme now that Brenda brought into the department, which was around in the third and the fourth year, the year you're about to graduate, is to start to look at your CV, try to identify all the skills that you've developed during the programme. You pick up lots of things that perhaps you don't realise, and we try to tease those out around team working, around confidence, around presentation skills, around communications, which is what employers look at. And we try to pull those out, and we have a form that Brenda has, and it sort of helps you then define your sort of CV, which you then use for your job applications. So that's the kind of journey you go through. And then in terms of the next stage of your career, what we try to do is offer opportunities for things like summer placements and work placements as you go through the degree programme. So getting summer jobs, summer placements is all really good evidence on your CV that you've gone out, you've sought something, and at the end of your degree programme, you're going to be employable. Okay, so if somebody has taken you on as a placement before and you get good references, it's really important for your final job. So we have a system in place where we advertise opportunities to students. Some of those are placements in industry. We have a number of research studentship placements over the summer every year for our undergraduate programmes, and they work with researchers in the department, get a bit more hands-on experience, and then that gives them opportunities to enhance their CV. The programme is also very flexible, so particularly the MEng programmes, we have the year in industry option now, where you can decide that you want to go and spend your fourth year based in industry. We have the study abroad option, where you can decide you might want to fly away from London and spend a year in the States or in Singapore or at a university in Europe. And again, those are really good things to have on your CV to show that you've not just become technical experts, but you can go and translate that into other places and into industry and adapt to other environments and other educational establishments. So the programme is quite flexible. There's lots of opportunities to enhance your CV. And then when you come to graduate, can't remember the number off the top of my head, but if you look at the sort of employment statistics, there's a very high percentage, like 96, 99% of graduates from UCL in general have proper jobs about 6 to 12 months after graduation. And if you then look at that in more detail, in terms of biochemical engineering, bioprocessing, then the majority of our students will go on to relevant bioindustry careers. Some people will just use it as a good degree, and so a lot of our graduates, particularly with us being based in London, will go into finance and management. So with the city just down the road and there's appealing salaries, quite a few people will use their quantitative problem-solving computer skills that they generate in order to go into a job in the financial sector. And there are some really interesting careers there in terms of, if you're looking at investments in biotech companies and startups, you need to know the financial side, but you also have to understand the science, which is what you get in the degree programme. And then, after you've left us and you've gone out into industry, we don't forget about you. So are you aware of LinkedIn, the professional networking site? You might not be, but we have an alumni group on there, and it's a way that we keep track with all our alumni, and we follow them not just as they go into their first career, first job, but as they go through the rest of the career. And where we're really very fortunate is that we have a lot of our alumni come back once they're in industry and lecture on our degree programmes, and they give us they work with the student societies, and they give lectures on the career paths that they've taken and so on. So we have a lot of interaction with our alumni. Final thing I'd say is this is our 20th birthday this year. So in end of this month is 20 years since we formed the department. That's something we're very proud of. We started that off with 8 members of academic staff and a cohort of about 50 students. Over those 20 years, we've now got to 22 members of academic staff. We've got plans for more. We have 400 or 500 students totally, if you include doctoral students and postdoctoral researchers. And what we're starting to do is that we're going to have a big alumni party. And then we're going to have an annual alumni dinner, so that hopefully then the people that want to have graduated, they will come back year after year and keep associated with the department.
Can I say something about the recent research? Some of our wins recently.
Yeah, okay. We've always been very much one of the leading bioprocessing groups in the world. So if you go back to some of my colleagues, Peter Dunnan and Malcolm Lilly, they basically founded the discipline of biochemical engineering going back to the sort of 60s and 70s. And UCL is recognised as one of around 4 labs where the discipline of biochemical engineering was established. The reason that you establish it is that you attract research funding, and we are now in the position where we are the largest academic bioprocessing group in the world, bigger than any other academic department in terms of the number of staff dedicated to biochemical engineering. And within the faculty, our academic staff have the highest research income per member of staff than any other department within the Faculty of Engineering at UCL. And it's something like 1.5 million average per member of staff. So our total research income is about £40 million at any particular time. A lot of research now is dedicated to national initiatives. So they don't want to spread the money around. They want to put it in centres of excellence where you have critical mass. And we are very fortunate that we have 2 what are called manufacturing hubs. So we have one, which is a £10 million hub focused around targeted healthcare. So if you think about antibiotics, let's say, somebody makes a batch of antibiotics and it's given to everybody. You've all had penicillin or ampicillin at some point in your life. The future of healthcare and the new medicines is around what's called stratified medicines and then ultimately personalised medicines. So there are some medicines that will work on you, but they won't work on you because of your sort of genetic composition. And what you need to do then is target the right medicine and how you manufacture it to the right person. So our targeted medicines hub is looking at the issues of stratified medicines, and it's also looking at the idea of personalised medicines, which are things like stem cell therapies and T cell therapies, where we take cells from you, we modify them, and we put them back into you to cure your disease. And that therapy will only work for you as an individual. So we've got a £10 million hub that's focusing on those research and manufacturing challenges. And just this year, we've also found out we've won another £7 million hub around vaccine manufacture. And so we are the only academic department that has 2 of these manufacturing hubs in the UK. And the vaccine one focuses around the issues of how you can manufacture. It has a more global outlook, which is if you think about developing countries and the costs of new therapies, how you can make things at very affordable prices. So the target of one of our programs is how do you make a vaccine for a dose of 15 cents per dose, which is really tricky. And also how do you make it sufficiently stable that it can be transported and remain stable in companies that don't have cold chain supplies between the manufacturing site and the patients that need the therapies. So I think that's an indication of the quality of what we do, but I think it's also an indication of the excitement of some of the things we're researching. The link to the undergraduate programs is that UCL, as an institution, we're moving to something called a research-based education. And this is where undergraduate students, right from the start, get involved with the research that's going on within the department. And that's a very synergistic relationship. So if I want my colleagues to be enthusiastic about their teaching, I want them to be teaching things that's exciting for them, which is basically what their research is on. And it's also advantageous to you because you get thrown in at the deep end. I won't hide that. We have these scenarios and challenges where you put together as teams in the first year. You're thrown in the deep end, you're given these problems to solve around vaccine supply to third world countries, and you're using the results, you're using the knowledge of what is the cutting edge technology at the minute. And that's really important because 3 years from now or 4 years when you graduate, the companies that you're going to work for will want to know that you've got knowledge of the latest developments and not the polio vaccine that was developed 45 years ago. Yeah. So it's the research and the teaching are very much hand in hand within the department.
Okay.
Anything else you want me to waffle on about?
No.
Any questions?
Sorry, because we at least, you know, it's consistent what we've
Okay,
said.
good. We didn't rehearse all
No.
beforehand. Any questions?
It's okay. It's still early, so we're going to have
Okay.
time for Q&A with the undergraduates later. So
great.
we'll get
they'll get the real deal from the undergraduates, what their experience is.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you,
I hope you
Gary.
enjoy the rest of the day.
So,
Okay. How am I doing for time, Kevin? Do I need to hurry up?
we've got 14 minutes left before.
The vaccine exercise.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I'll wrap up this quite quickly because I want you guys to actually get on and do a little bit of. I want you guys to do some work because it's boring to just listen to us.